Today is actually National Chai Day.
National, like neckties?
Chai.
Oh, National Chai Day.
Yeah, Indian masala chai. I have mine. So my mom, is that for mindfulness?
Yes, this is our Dancing Mindfulness logo that went along with the book several years ago. So this is where I keep all my teas and hippie coffees and things that I drink. So how wonderful I'm being interviewed actually on National Chai Day. That's pretty cool.
I know. I like it. So I had the diya. I didn't realize when I was painting it that I painted a diya, so it's like shining light on mental health journeys. So that was my concept of that. But is that your Tumbler? I like that.
Yes. The Dancing Mindfulness Tumbler. So it's my favorite. It's just a good tumbler. I mean, let alone that it has the Dancing Mindfulness logo on it. But back in 2015, when the book Dancing Mindfulness came out, we set out a cafe press store. So I got a bunch of different Dancing Mindfulness. I think we might still have it, cafepress.com/dancing mindfulness.
You have so many websites now.
No, I don't even visit that one anymore. But this is the cover of the book Dancing Mindfulness.
Wow.
2015. So I like to have it on my Tumblr. It's just a nice reminder of that journey.
You have such a fun spirit.
Thank you.
Ready for this? So
let's dive in.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Chai Together. I am your host and founder, Pratibha Day. You are tuning in for your cup of courage, hope, and imagination today, hence Chai. So we use courage on this platform to showcase our stories. We use hope to overcome, and we use imagination to resonate and understand with the stories that are being shared. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jamie. Please help me pronounce your last name.
So the actual Croatian is Marich.
Marich, thank you.
Usually English speakers say Marich, kind of like the conversation we had about your name. Marich in English, Marich if you want to use the actual Croatian. I'll answer to either.
Wow, Dr. Jamie Marich. I really like that. So you said it's Croatian ethnicity, right?
Yes, my family, I'm mostly Croatian ethnicity, a little bit more than half, but I also have a couple other Slavic mixtures in me, Hungarian, Serbian, and Czech. But I raised with my Croatian identity primarily, yes.
Wow. So I want to ask you, how do you feel today?
I feel like I need a breath. Will you take a breath with me?
Yeah, I will. Ready?
Yes. Oh, my God. My yawn is coming out with that breath.
Wow. So, have you ever done breath work?
Oh, I do quite a bit of breath work from yogic traditions for sure. And I know there's a lot of different styles of it out there now. I think any of my favorite breath exercises, strategies I most connect with are those that really free the breath. Which is why my favorite breath is often a yawn in moments like this, when we just take a breath together. And you asked how I'm feeling today. I'm tired, and my breath is giving me that. It was very
real.
I'm all about getting real, and it was great to stop and pause and take the breath together for sure. Yet what doing that did was reveal you're tired. And as you know, I'm in between two trips. I was just in Europe for a month, which was spectacular, and I'm about to go out on my only real major training trip this second half of the year, since trainings have been largely online. But we do have a couple in-person trainings we're doing here that have been safe enough to stay on the schedule. So I'll be doing that. I think what I'm most excited about on those trips is I'm getting to see some of my dear friends I haven't seen in a while. So I think when I mentioned that, I'm feeling very excited.
So let me tell the people about you before I go on, because otherwise we'd just be talking without them knowing who you are.
Yeah.
So Dr. Jamie Marich, their pronouns are she and they, describes herself as a facilitator of transformative experiences, a clinical trauma specialist, expressive artist, writer, yogini, performer, short filmmaker, Reiki master, TEDx speaker, and recovery advocate. She unites all of these elements in her mission to inspire healing in others. She began her career as a humanitarian aid worker in Bosnia from 2000 to 2003, primarily teaching English and music while freelancing with other projects. Jamie travels internationally, teaching on topics related to trauma, EMDR therapy, expressive arts, mindfulness, and yoga, while maintaining a private practice and online education operations in her home base of Warren, Ohio. Jamie is the author of numerous books on trauma, recovery, and healing, with many more projects in the works. Marich is the founder of the Institute for Creative Mindfulness, which is actually how I discovered Dr. Jamie. And you can learn more at drjamiemarich.com, and also visit the Institute for Creative Mindfulness.com to learn more about her institute. I love all that. How many years did it take for you to get to this point?
So it's been a slow evolution. I consider 2001 to be the year I really started working in human services. I was not a professional clinician at that point. I was working in Bosnia-Hercegovina after the war, teaching English. Yet it was there I was mentored by my first recovery mentor, who helped me not only with my own recovery journey, she helped me to really teach English in a trauma-informed way. And I like to say that I went there as an English teacher. I came back as a social worker. I did formally get my master's degree in 2005. And it's been the journey of, I've worked in really all the different places one can work as a mental health clinician with addiction training. I've done inpatient work, outpatient work, treatment center work, both inpatient and outpatient. I worked in a group practice for a lot of years. And with every year of my career, it's just been a experience of stepping out into more and more independence with it all. And in 2013, I'd started training other therapists about 2008, and that started as like a part-time gig, and now it's pretty much my full-time thing, training other therapists and writing and doing a lot of the advocacy work that I do. So Institute for Creative Mindfulness as a company really formed between 2013, 2015. And I'll give you this tip, because this might be useful to people who are listening. My career has been a collection of, I will try anything once. And when I do that, when I accept invitations, when I work in some facet of the field, I will know pretty quickly if it's for me or not. If I feel a good energetic connection, if this feels like this is going to be something viable and sustainable. And coming from a recovery background, and a lot of this is informed by my yoga practice too, really living in this state of kind of radical surrender, like, hey, send down the plan. What comes next?
I'm sorry. I was just having this conversation with my friend today. I was like, that's how I've been feeling past few days. You know, what am I doing? Where am I going? Those questions. Right. Even though I'm doing all of this, like I just shared with you, and you're doing all of that. It's like I feel an indifferent feeling, you know, like something needs to click.
And yeah, I mean, I'm in this journey for a lot of years, and I'm still, maybe I need to be saying this now to make a connection. My personal life has still been a bit of a mess through all of this. And I know on that, even as I say that, there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm a complex trauma survivor myself. As one of my dear friends guided me, our relational parts of our lives can be take very long to repair, because they're often the first things to get injured. And so that's still very much a work in process and progress for me. I've been married and divorced twice. I've had my heart broken a lot of times. Sometimes I wonder, am I even meant to have a relationship, because I'm just not relationship material, being so independent. And it's interesting, because in my professional career and endeavors, I've never really asked those kind of struggling questions. I just turn it over, and what's supposed to happen will happen. And so even as I'm sharing that with you, it's kind of like the universe's way of saying, Jamie, maybe you need to try a little bit more of that in your personal life.
You know, I really like you sharing that, because I had an old friend of mine reach out, and she was asking me this question. I told her that I would ask you regarding her complex of PTSD. And how do you avoid, basically, how can she feel her feelings without avoiding them? That was the question. You know, and I said, well, do you know the root, you know, of the issue? But you being trained in that, do you have any words of wisdom from your expertise?
First of all, to your friend, I applaud the question being asked.
Yeah.
Because I fully feel, from my perspective as a therapist, as a survivor myself, that one of the greatest barriers survivors face is, I don't want to say unwillingness, because often it's not unwillingness, and sometimes it's not inability. There's often just a block around feeling feelings.
That's what I said.
And yes, now the key is, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
And for so many of us, it's because we grew up in environments where we were punished for feeling feelings. I know I was made to feel weird for feeling things so deeply.
Mhm.
Even some of these comments, like, if you keep crying, I'll give you something to cry about. Boys don't
Yeah.
cry. Put on your big girl pants. For many survivors, showing any kind of feeling may have led to just a very unsafe experience for them. They may have been punished for showing any kind of feeling. So those are some of the blocks I see people have. I've also seen people say things like, if I start feeling feelings, I'm going to completely unravel because there's just too many feelings to feel. If I start letting some of them out, they're all just going to engulf me. So I think a good first step is doing some unpacking around, what is the fear? I use this phrase quite a bit in my work, feelings phobia, that we as a culture have it pretty deeply. And the experience of complex trauma, I think, really can ingrain it. So let's start with examining the origin story of the fear. And depending on whether that individual is in therapy, spiritual direction, spiritual practice, there might be different solutions for how to address it. Yet I think really getting to the origin of it is the solid first step. And then, like many things, baby steps. With a lot of folks I work with, there's a need to hear, I'm not going to make you feel it all at once. We're not going, but some people, and even as I say that, feel good ripping the Band-Aid off and just letting it all flow. But even that has to come with a degree of preparation for what to expect, how to deal with your life, let's say in between therapy sessions, how to deal with what may come up. So while I think the way to approach it is individualized for different people, it is fundamentally this issue of feelings phobia, that we are afraid to feel. And so figure out where is the origin of that fear. And a good therapist ought to be able to guide you through that. If you're a spiritual practitioner, Reiki receiver, or practitioner, that's a good place to start working with a little bit in whatever strategies you may use. This is my cat, Misty.
Hi.
Who's joined us for the interview.
That's not a good meow.
Well, it's the mommy. It's my time for you to come on the couch and be with me.
Really?
Meow. Yeah. Towards the end of my workday, she can sense like you've been on the computer too long.
Yeah.
So some people will say things like, don't work too hard. And I say, don't worry, Misty won't let me. Because if I'm out here much longer, after I do my evening commitments here, then yeah, she'll be giving me that angry face and keep crying until I join her on the couch.
You still have one more after me.
I know, but she's a very intuitive kitty, so I'm very grateful for
I
her.
like that.
She's been my great friend and companion in a lot of the healing journey. Yeah.
Is she your emotional comfort animal?
Yeah, I mean, she's not
Emotional support animal. Yes,
she's not legally registered.
Yeah,
as
legally.
Yeah,
Right.
it's totally what she is. I mean, every animal I've ever had has been that, for sure.
I feel like animals do that. They support you, you know. So I want to ask you, firstly, thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that, as in you're not perfect either, the work you do, but you also have your own personal, complex traumas that you went through. And I wouldn't have known that, but they do say most people who are therapists is because they also went through something. They want to help other people now. But that journey of you dealing with your own stuff and doing all this work, it's really hard for you, is it?
It goes through peaks and valleys.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, to your first point, yes, a lot of therapists go into therapy, or a lot of therapists have been inspired to go into the field of therapy because they've had their own issues or their own things around healing. What's important to recognize is just helping people is not in and of itself going to help you. Just helping people is not going to make you feel better about yourself, even though that's why a lot of people seem to do it subconsciously. I think the key is, and this is how I've always approached it, is that the people you work with may, for lack of a better word, trigger you, bring up some of your shadow stuff. And the key is, once they do that, how are you going to address it in your own healing practices, with your therapist, with your spiritual team, with whoever may be helping you to heal? I really believe I would not have done the level of work I've done on my own complex trauma and dissociation if I was not a therapist.
Wow.
Because there's something about doing this work, and even as now more of an educator than a practicing therapist, even working with students, working with my team of people who train under me, things get brought up. And the key is, how do I use the healing practices I've learned to be able to deal with it? So, I mean, I don't regret the journey, because I really feel grateful for where the healing journey has brought me. Sometimes where it can get a little exhausting is, especially as a therapist with a little bit of a public reputation here, people really kind of clinging to me as if I have all the answers, and I most definitely do not. I most definitely do not. And sometimes I can feel a little bit of that strain of being put up on the helper's pedestal. And I mean, or therapists deal with this in general. I don't think it's necessarily something public figure therapists that's unique to us. So I think the key becomes, how do you continue to take care of yourself and validate that the people you're working with see what you're doing as something special, but also helping them to see that the answers are within them. You, as the therapist, are just the facilitator of that process.
Wow. I like that answer. And I was thinking pedestal as well, because I remember when I first discovered you, I was like, wow, like she's come so far, right? Because social media. But then when you get to know someone, it's like, they're just like me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people are just people. So will you share with us, when you started your journey, so you went for your master's, and then how did each piece of work that you've done come into place? Like your spiritual journey, like when did that begin, you know?
Yeah, I actually found EMDR therapy through my first level of graduate training, and then I found the depths of my spiritual practice, where it's come to, through EMDR. So I have a background as a how do I say this politely? I was raised in two very conservative Christian households. Well, my parents stayed together, but my mom was Catholic. My dad converted to evangelical Christianity, and it was a spiritual war zone growing up. Although both religions for me were not really safe to be myself, right? So I came out of my home of origin really searching for something, having tried being religious myself at times. But ultimately, it was finding 12-step recovery, healing from my own addiction, and then getting into my own trauma recovery that catapulted everything. So what essentially happened was, after working the 3 years I worked in Bosnia doing aid, teaching English primarily, doing some other things with language, I came back to the US to do graduate school in clinical counseling. My mentors in Bosnia sent me there to graduate school. So I came back to the US, and it's when I was working on the internship site, at an adolescent psychiatric ward, I just became very triggered by the way I saw the kids being treated. It wasn't the kids that were bothering me. It was how I saw the system treat the kids, right? So that is what got me into doing EMDR therapy. I had a graduate professor recommend it to me, because at that point I felt like I knew a lot of what talk therapy was going to tell me, and I needed to try something different. And EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, just completely changed my life and my world. And I knew shortly after receiving it and having this life-changing experience, I had to be able to offer it to my clients. So I trained in it pretty quickly. I ended up doing my doctoral dissertation on EMDR and addiction. And so it was always a big part of my life. But it's interesting because EMDR, for listeners who aren't aware, is a pretty, on the surface to most Westerners, seems like a pretty bizarre therapy, because you have people first do adequate relaxation and preparation, and then you invite them to activate their traumatic memories, not in a way where they have to talk about them extensively, but the therapist will ask the client some key questions. And when there's enough body activation, The therapist moves their fingers back and forth to create eye movements. The therapist may also tap or use a machine to tap back and forth or use audio tones. And this bilateral motion, this back and forth motion, however it's being created, essentially allows the brain to communicate more effectively with itself. The left and right brain come on greater line together communicating. The so-called downstairs brain and upstairs brain come a little bit more effectively online. And it really just creates a lot of cool aha moments for people that talk therapy alone may not do. Yet what's interesting is that the founder of EMDR therapy, Francine Shapiro, was a mindfulness meditator. She had a pretty rich Buddhist meditation practice. I did not know that at the time. But what I did know and receive was a lot of her language in EMDR therapy with phrases like, go with that, where a heavy emotion comes up, a new sensation, a new memory. My therapist would tell me, okay, just go with that, which to me meant don't judge it, don't try to analyze it, just kind of feel what's coming up with it as we work with the stimulation and see where it flows next. A lot of the breath work that Shapiro would use within EMDR came from that place. And the line notice without judgment is used quite a bit in EMDR. And I found that line to be impactful in my life overall. I really think I learned more Eastern-based meditation through that line specifically. Now, I had some training in contemplative Christian meditation in my earlier days of spiritual practice, yet it was through my own EMDR therapist's enthusiasm that I tried meditation in and of itself. I began a yoga practice, kind of dabbled in it starting about 2008. Then in 2010, I began practicing earnestly. And yeah, as it's been said, yoga is a gateway to many different things. And that helped me reconnect with my dance practice again. And it's been just really marvelous with every year, with every moment I've gone through, being able to see how the Western Christianity in which I was raised and the Eastern practices that I've really come to love do fit together. They fit together in a very powerful way for me. And that connecting force really is love. And that these different specific practices we engage in are paths up that mountain. That's one metaphor, one way to look at it. A better way might be rivers and streams flowing into the ocean, because the ocean is often used as this metaphor for eternity, for consciousness, right? So I'm grateful that I've been on the journey that I've been on, and thank you for letting me share the summary of it.
So it's been since I came to the US, basically. Like since I was 6 years old, you've been doing this because I'm 28.
Cool.
So this is fantastic. And have you heard of etnicas in Peru for ayahuasca?
I don't know that group specific as a person or group specifically, but I know what happens in Peru with ayahuasca. So no, but I don't know the specific group.
Did you ever experience
ayahuasca?
Yeah, ayahuasca.
I have not. I'm actually doing some intention setting right now that if I do any kind of medicinal ceremony here, which I have set the intention to do, what form or shape it's going to take. So, but I, can't argue with results of how a lot of plant medicines are helping people connect with whatever that thing is they haven't been able to connect with, right?
Something to click. It's interesting, like when people may see you now, like you were saying, they look for answers, right, in you, but this has been a journey for over like 20 years now, right?
Oh, sure.
Started it.
Yeah, I've been thinking I've been completely sober for 19 years, and I started the journey a few years, probably 2 years before that. So yeah, we're at the over 20-year mark.
It's amazing to me because, where I am now, it's like to not rush the processes. And so when you started authoring your books, like, did you feel like when you were writing that, oh, I need to learn everything before I start writing? Like, did you ever question yourself? Like, I don't know enough yet, like doubting yourself, or was it easy for you more so?
I think I was lucky because the first book I wrote, I was asked to write it.
Oh, wow.
It was nothing that I went seeking out a
Mhm.
publisher or an idea. There was a group that came to me specifically because they knew I had this expertise and the spin that they wanted on this expertise. So I think that gave me a good confidence boost, knowing, all right, I do have something to say because people are asking me to write. Here's my feeling on it. Writing's a fickle thing. It's a lovely thing because a lot of the writing I do, especially writing that's more fiction or poetry, I write just to write. It may not ever end up anywhere. It's just something I have to do to get things out of me. And a lot of the writing that I do is more so for clinicians, for people that are interested in human services, for people who are interested in their own self-help. And with that audience in mind, I know that I have something valuable to share.
Mm.
Something that really helped me early on was Niels Bohr's definition of an expert. You know, he was a great physicist, and he said an expert is somebody who has made every mistake in a very narrow field. And I have tacked on to that, yes, somebody who's made every mistake in a very narrow field and has lived to tell the tale. Because so many of the things that I write about, have written about, yeah, I guess I'm an expert because I have made mistakes and learned from them. If having lived experience makes you an expert, then I bring that to the floor as well. I will say, as it comes to writing, especially the kind of books I write, here's how my process works. By time I sit down to write a book, I've taught the material so much, or I've talked about the material so much in conversations like this, that writing is almost like the last part of the process.
Yeah.
And sometimes people have come to me, especially students or team members in my program, and they'll ask me to look at their writing. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback I tend to give is, you've not taught this enough. You've not talked about it enough. You've not shared it enough. I mean, it's good writing if you're wanting more of a technical college paper type writing. But if you want writing that is more, I think I write in this tone that's both professional and conversational. So think about who you want to reach with your writing. And then there's some people I know who write, they don't care who reads it. They just know they have to do it for them to get it out into the world. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it.
Wow. But you write about trauma, right? I saw you write about trauma.
Yeah.
And do you find that, like, how was the process for writing about trauma? You having your own past traumas, and you just, working with clients with so much trauma. Like, is that the same process that you've, done the work so much that it just all pours out?
It's a great question. Again, a place I think I feel I've had an advantage in that is, I've never been one, and early recovery gave me this process, who's been afraid to feel. I've learned that the more I'm willing to tell the truth, the more I'm willing to share lived experience, it's helpful to me. For some people, that can be a little harder. And I think the reason, as my career has evolved, I have gotten more candid, more vulnerable, is because trauma recovery has taught me I really don't have anything to hide.
Oh, wow.
And the language of being stuck in trauma, stuck in addiction, stuck in shame, is that everything about you needs to be a secret. And don't get me wrong, boundaries are important, because there are sometimes, even as I contemplate some of my writing and my sharing, and knowing how people can then gravitate to it as like, oh, you have the answer. I wondered, have I shared too much? Have I put too much of myself out there? And that's some of the work I'm doing right now, is like, where's that line between me being entitled to my own private healing journey, or am I entitled to it? Because, I don't know. I'm thinking of a quote of Gabrielle Bernstein, who's a great recovery writer. And she said, all a spiritual teacher is is somebody who has a story of recovery to share.
Oh, wow.
And speaking to your early question, that really helped me in the early days when I had some of this, shades of imposter syndrome come through. Or shades of, I think where it hit me more is, have I studied with the correct teachers in my lineage and my spiritual journey? Because if you've been around yoga or meditation circles, people talk about my teacher, my teacher, my teacher. And I've always been the type that has had several teachers. Many teachers have existed on my path. And I really adore how she put that out there, that a spiritual teacher is just someone who has a story of recovery to share. That made it very beautiful for me.
You're so vibrant, and it shows, right? Like whenever you're dressing up in the colors and like your life, you show your life to us, right? Because you are a public figure. But, in general, overall, do you feel, because you've had so many mentors and because of all that you went through in the past, you went on exploring, from Reiki master to yogini to the multiple things because you wanted to get to know yourself more or heal more that way? Like, how can I get more healing for myself?
Yeah. I think like a lot of people on the path, I could sometimes have been persuaded by this, is there something I'm missing? And when I hear that my friends are taking this training, that training, this training, that training. And so, I mean, I'm only human to admit some of that may have motivated me to do all these different kinds of trainings and paths and certifications. But I think fundamentally, and I tell students I mentor or people on my team I work with who are kind of in these later stages of their professional career, especially when they say, well, what training should I take next? Because I do admire that spirit of always wanting to learn, being a perpetual student. I feel it's whatever training is going to help you most with your own healing, not necessarily your own knowledge, but your own healing. So several years back, I had the time and the space and the opportunity in my calendar. I had always wanted to take a full yoga teacher training. And the time opened up, the money opened up several years back, and I was able to do it purely for me. And there's some who might have said, oh, I should have gotten trained in another counseling modality or this, that, or the other, or done more with trauma. And I had some trauma-informed yoga at that point. No, I did the full lineage-based training for 500 hours, and I just loved it. And it's one of those trainings where, yeah, I got a certificate at the end of it. But it's what it did for me inside in my healing journey that was and still is the real certificate, the real gold in it.
Yeah, those don't matter to me. It's about the healing for me as well. Do you feel you ever get tired of like talking about trauma?
Yeah.
You ever get tired of this? Like, you need a break.
And you could probably tell by my answer. So as you know, I was able to take a full month break here recently, and I went to Europe. I went to Croatia. I did not check a work email for 4 weeks.
Wow.
And yes, is the short answer. Of course, I get tired of talking about trauma. I've been going through more moments in the last year than I have in my whole career. When I've asked myself, do you still want to be doing this professionally? Where so much of your time and energy is spent talking about something so horrible and putting yourself in a position where people feel like they're seeking you for answers and all of this. And then inevitably something will happen like on my trip where I'll just have a conversation with somebody who's hosting me. And yeah, it's clear that I have, but I almost wonder if some of the most important things I have to share about healing are not things I'll ever do in a professional venue. But they will be things or conversations I will do when I'm having these conversations with people human to human. So because trauma healing is such an important part of my journey, I don't think I'll ever reach a point where I'll stop talking about it in my life. But yeah, I've definitely gotten to a point where even as I meet some new friends, the natural conversation starter is, what do you do? And I've had a couple instances lately where I'm like, is it okay if I don't tell you the details of it just yet? Like, this is like, is it
They
okay?
can just Google your name and they'll know.
Yeah, I know. And then I don't tell them my full name right away. Like if I meet somebody
You don't
dating.
add on social media yet? Yeah. Not
Yeah,
yet.
yeah. But if they find me on social media, they'll know. And then I just think it's important to emphasize that at the end of the day, I'm a human. And
Yes.
I do think that has been the key to why I have been able to talk about trauma so much and not completely burn out. I mean, of course, I have these moments like I've shared with you here of, oh, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to keep doing this? I think the importance is always staying in touch with the fact that you are human, embracing your humanity. Many, many years ago, when I went through my second divorce, I became a bit ashamed of myself when I had such an emotional reaction in the courtroom. And one of my recovery mentors was with me, my sponsor, and he's my gay dad. I call him. He's a wonderful presence in my life. He and his husband. And after I got the divorce and after the courtroom experience, I remember they took me out for sushi. And I was sitting there really kind of berating myself of, oh, I got too emotional. And Daryl said to me, Jamie, and he was kind of stern about it. He goes, don't ever apologize for your humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So many people I know who have just been ashamed of their humanity have not made it. We've lost them to suicide or addiction.
Wow.
And so he really embraced that, and that stuck with me. So,
wow. I think that's a big lesson. I'm going to remember that. Because like, oh, am I being too much? No, like you don't, being unapologetic, you don't apologize for crying too much or laughing too much or being too loud. You know what I mean? Because of society and things like that. I can agree with him saying that. I like that. So let me just switch it over before we wrap it up and ask you about, your institute. So I saw that there's so many trainings and so many different things available. And are you still practicing all of it, like in your schedule, or are there some things that you've, delegated to other people?
Well, I'm currently on sabbatical seeing clients clinically and doing most of my consultation work. I've definitely delegated that to people within my organization. Now, our primary training programs that we offer are in EMDR therapy. I still do a couple cycles of those a year myself. The vast majority of those I've delegated because I have so many. I'm just fortunate and blessed to have so many talented trainers with ICM, Institute for Creative Mindfulness. And we all bring our individual variations to the table, yet we have a pretty like mind in how we approach trauma and EMDR. So I've done a lot of that delegating on the expressive arts end of things, dancing mindfulness. My good friend and colleague Irene Rodriguez has been doing most of that work lately. And yeah, I like when I delegate because it gives me more time to focus on writing, writing and creating things, which is what I really adore.
You know what I learned? I had a guest on, Mr. Pinaki, and he's the one who told me that today was Chai Day.
Nice.
And International Chai Day. And he told me, he said, everything's already created. We just make things. And I was like, oh yeah. But we still tend to interchange those words. But I just wanted to share that. And it was really beautiful having you on here today and speaking with you and you sharing your time with me because you are occupied. So I don't want to hold you up anymore, but I hope you enjoyed, speaking with me as well.
Oh, this was lovely. I very much enjoyed it. Your questions are very real. I like real questions that help us to bring the humanity out together. And ever since I met your presence online and I saw Chai together, I said, that's just, I want to be a part of that. So I'm really grateful we got to connect today.
Me too. Oh. Thank you. I will speak to you again shortly.
Sounds good, my friend. Until the next time. Bye.
Bye.